name is Jordan Friedman. I'm a partner at Moroch, a New Orleans-based integrated marketing agency. I'm joined by my colleagues Gerald O'Connard, who's director of the Chicago-based Beverage Testing Institute, as well as Michonne Ellis, who is the CEO of Chicago-based Clout, a public relations firm. Together, we're the Beverage Development and Marketing Alliance, and we're here today to talk about how portfolio companies can unlock latent value by taking a fresh look at orphan brands. Next slide, please. So we're not here today to talk about products whose life cycles have expired. That happens. Some products become obsolete. What we're here to talk about are brands that have real value, that have slipped through the cracks, that have somehow become forgotten. A close analysis of brand portfolios can reveal astounding amounts of cash literally wasted through the neglect of otherwise valuable brand assets. This can happen any number of ways. So how do brands wind up in the orphanage? Well, this can happen through changing consumer tastes. Processed meats are a great example of that. People just don't eat bologna or salami or liverwurst the way they used to. People have developed much more healthy tastes. And so brands like Oscar Mayer have definitely suffered as a result of changing consumer tastes. There are also cultural shifts and sensitivities. You can take a look at brands like Aunt Jemima or Uncle Ben's or other brands that just needed to be refurbished because what they had represented just is no longer acceptable to the populace. Then there's products, innovations, and evolutions. I don't care how good your fax machine is, people just don't send faxes like they used to. Your rotary phones, people just don't use them anymore. So those are examples of products that have gone through their life cycle. What we're here also to really take a look at are brands that have gotten lost through acquisitions, consolidations, and M&A, or brands that have gotten lost as the holding companies of which they're a part have had a change of priorities, change of directions. Next slide, please. So when you're dealing with an orphan brand, a decision is really required. Do you want to keep that brand and make the required investments in it? Do you want to sell that brand and realize some value through that brand sale? Or do you want to just let the brand die, which we think 9 out of 10 times is not the advisable move because that's just a waste of value that could otherwise be realized in some fashion. Next slide, please. So here we want to make the case for investment. Whether you choose to refurbish the brand to have it be a moneymaker, whether you choose to sell the brand. Next slide, please. So an example we wanted to take a look at for the purposes of this discussion is Midori Melon. Midori was launched by Suntory in Japan in 1964 and was a somewhat obscure brand, but really came out of the gate strong in the United States in 1978 and was debuted at a cast party for Studio 54, at Studio 54 for Saturday Night Fever. This was coming out of the gates pretty strong, and within several years, the brand was distributed widely across the globe. Next slide, please. Fast forward to recently, though, Midori Melon Liquor was experiencing stagnant sales of 220,000 cases per year. To revitalize the brand, the company reimagined and optimized the liquid itself. Gerald's going to have some more on that shortly. Midori also made an investment in launching a new campaign, Light Up the Night, which focused on, among other marketing methods, point-of-sale promotions, which we think right now are more effective than ever, particularly during the pandemic. Next slide, please. Midori Melon retargeted to an ethnic female audience, and as a result, within 18 months, saw annual sales increase from 220,000 to 400,000 cases, which we think is a very meaningful increase in sales. Next slide, please. Another great example of where investment can deliver tremendous value is with Pabst Blue Ribbon. We're all familiar with this anecdotally, but we thought it was worth a closer look for the purposes of this discussion. A one-time beer juggernaut, PBR was bought by a wealthy entrepreneur in 1985 for $65 million. Sadly, he died 2 years later, and PBR became a brand lost within a charitable trust, a philanthropic organization that was founded by this entrepreneur. Having sold 18 million barrels annually at its peak in 1977, by 2001, PBR was selling less than 1 million barrels annually. After languishing for years, a new CEO was brought in for the PBR brand. He injected new life into the brand by focusing on hipsters who were seeking authenticity. Next slide, please. As a result of this sustained effort, between 2005 and 2010, PBR brand volume increased 69%. PBR's gross margins increased 48%. Operating profit rose 81%. And net revenue per barrel increased 28%. We go back for 1 sec. That data was provided by Chicago Tribune. In 2010, PBR was bought by billionaire investor Charles Dean Metropolis, who continued PBR's now legendary comeback. Next slide, please. And in 2004, PBR was bought by a partnership that included private equity giant TSG Consumer Partners for over $700 million. So we think that these two cases really illustrate what can be realized when investment is made in refurbishing the brands, whether you choose to keep that brand, or whether you choose to sell it. And my colleague, Michon, will take it from here.
Thanks, Jordan. And again, thank you all for joining us this morning. Again, we had a lot of fun thinking about this topic, and the point of this discussion today is just to give you some real tangible things to walk away with. So when we're talking about orphan brands, you know, the key of all of this is how you recognize a brand that still has value and potential. And so we put together a list, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. And by no means is this an exhaustive list of checkpoints, but these are a few that we found interesting. And that first one on this slide around overextension, you see that a lot in the marketplace. And what we mean by that is, you know, where there's a saturation of the brand itself, you have different price points around the same brand. Coach is a great example of that. The leather maker, they, you know, purses, belts, all kinds of stuff. And they started making discounted versions of the brand. And it just, our opinion of it, we think that hurt them in the long run because it was no longer special. So when we're talking about overextension, that's one thing that we tend to check when we're working with clients on, you know, deciding on whether or not it's worth the investment to revive a brand. That's a big one. The other is, and we this is funny. It's normally one element that could derail a brand. And a great example of that could be just lack of awareness around a particular brand. And we've seen some clients just give up on it, and it's truly an awareness issue that can be addressed, and this brand could go on and do some really cool things. So that's another area that we'd like to check. The $1 million question: should you launch a new brand? Should you stick with an existing one and dust it off and give it some new polish? And we always recommend that you take a look at the brand that has been shelved for whatever reason, and what are the elements of that brand that could be polished up and positioned to move forward. That's a much, from a time and cost perspective, is a much efficient way of staying competitive in the marketplace. And lastly is customer sentiment. A lot of times, you know, there may be customer feedback that may be valuable that we can, again, adjust that will make the brand even more relevant to a consumer base. And again, we've seen it where clients, you know, don't truly understand the feedback. Maybe the consumer couldn't pronounce the name of the product, which is why it didn't do well. So we like to look at that feedback from consumers and leverage that and see if there's a way to, again, assess whether or not there's some value and potential in a brand that's sat for a little bit. Next slide. So not just because I'm the PR guy, but I do see the value if you're going to reintroduce a brand or revive a brand. PR is a great way of doing it. It's a great way to test how consumers feel about the product and whether or not there's a space for it before you put the working dollars behind advertisement and that kind of thing. And so, reviving a brand, you walk that fine line of historical voice versus that new voice that you need to have in the marketplace to appeal to today's consumer. And so what we like to do is talk through how do you evolve the narrative around the brand. And I think 2020 has given us a real platform to work from around leading with brand purpose. And so if you're going to reintroduce a brand that's been set for whether it's 3 years or 20 years, what is the core value or the purpose of that brand? Maybe lean into that more, and that is your reestablishment of a messaging in the marketplace, and it may connect with consumers in a real way. So creating messaging that resonates is key, but I think the secret sauce will be in the brand purpose. So give some real thought to that. And obviously that last point here is, getting everyone aligned around it, whether it's internally or your supply chain, everyone talking the same talk around purpose, and we like that. That's a great way to launch a brand. Next slide. So, and again, you guys are pros, the folks that are on our discussion today. But there are some things that we do want to talk about around, getting some sort of revival PR plan off the ground, data and trends. I can't see any more about that, and I think you guys get that right away. Once you have that message out in the marketplace, be ready to engage today's consumer. And again, I think 2020 has taught us all this, is that consumers want to be involved with the brands they support. They expect to hear from brands that they support. So reviving a brand, connecting with consumers in a real way could be do wonders for reintroducing a brand to the marketplace. And so we like that a lot. And lastly, how do you convert that engagement into sales? Again, the consumer will dictate a lot about how you can do that. Again, every brand is unique, but the secret sauce, again, lies in brand purpose, consumer engagement, and letting them tell you how and when they want to engage with the brand. Next slide. And lastly, that media outreach is key as well. And I mentioned, you want to put advertising dollars behind it. If you decide that there's value and potential in a brand and you want to reintroduce it, I say soft sell it to media first. And here's why I say that is that chances are there's a phenomenal story behind a brand, why it was created, similar to what Jordan shared about Pabst Blue Ribbon. And also Midori. There's some really interesting fun facts that consumers might find appealing that might, open that door for re-engagement. So leveraging media relationships to tell that story is a really good route to go. Social media influencers also is a great way to reintroduce a brand and tell the story behind the brand, get consumers to care about the history, but also where you're planning to go with the brand and how you plan to fit in their lives is a great way of reintroducing a brand. And lastly, be creative about it. Have some fun with it. Again, you're sitting on all this historical data. Have some fun with it. And again, make consumers care. So high level, really, really quickly going through it. But again, the whole thing behind this is being able to assess the value and potential around a brand and what platform do you use to reintroduce it? Again, just some initial thoughts, but we'd love to get together with you and talk more about a brand that you may have in mind. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Gerald. He's going to talk more about the spirit space specifically, and there's some good thinking here. So I'll turn it over to Gerald.
Thank you, Mishan. Thank you, Jordan. Yeah, I wanted to look at this situation from a liquid lens, if you will, and talk about some of the hidden assets that exist within the product itself that I think are important to consider as you're evaluating whether or not to invest in an orphan brand or a legacy brand. So two of the hidden assets that we've identified is taste memory and taste curiosity. So building on the existing audience, the established customers for a brand, they remember what this tastes like. Even if they haven't had it for 20 years, taste and memory are incredibly powerful. And these are really assets that somehow just get overlooked in the discussion about how much am I investing in PR or marketing and other business decisions behind the brand. But there's an actual relationship that's a tactile, physical relationship built into the brand with its established customers. And this is really important because this is going to bring people back to the brand, these fond memories. And if you can kind of create these situations to replicate those fond memories, whether it's a new cocktail, whether it's a new way to enjoy the product that is something that the customer hasn't thought of, that will bring them back into the fold of considering this as part of their regular set of brands that they're going to drink. The other thing is taste curiosity, which speaks more to newer audiences that have not tried the brand, but that are just naturally curious. There are whole segments of this of the economy right now that are focused on what's new, what is the latest flavor that is out there, what are the latest cocktails, what are the latest things that that I, as someone who's really interested in taste and flavor, I'm exploring, and I want to know, oh, there's this older thing that I haven't tried. How can I get it? How can I use it? So there's that curiosity that you can build off of that built-in demand that's already in the market. So these are two very powerful triggers that really should not be overlooked. And at BTI, we've been observing the way flavors change in a brand over time. We've got some great examples. One of them is my brother-in-law, Richard. He is a staunch fan of Southern Comfort, to put it mildly. And, one year he came to me and said, hey, this tastes different. What's going on with this, Gerald? And I looked at it, and the ABV had dropped 2 percentage points. That's going to affect the flavor. Now, that might have been a marketing decision. It might have been an economic decision. I don't know why it dropped. But the end consumer is very aware of the flavor of the things that they like. So you have to be super careful when you're adjusting the flavors. Not to say that you shouldn't try to adapt the flavor and maybe improve it, but we see that most often it's kind of going back to the original, as George said, the original purpose. What was the original purpose, or what was the original point of difference of that flavor? That's where you have to reconnect with when you're relaunching an Orphan brand, because that's what made it special and will continue to make it special for other people that might not know it. So this taste memory, that unique to product taste is really foundational to reintroduce it to the OG fans, the original fans of it. And if it doesn't taste the way they remember it, they are not going to buy it again. Or if they do, they'll buy it once and then they're done with it. So you only have one chance to kind of reinvigorate, reconvert your original fans. And then for newer fans, you want to make sure that, hey, this tastes really good. It tastes foundational in terms of how it was set up to be in the market with its original flavor. So you have to really allocate resources to make sure that that liquid is really ready. And if it has gone through this kind of flavor drift thing over time, that it's reset, realigned with what's going on in the marketplace right now, and really touches back on the original purpose and process or ingredients that made it distinctive. This is really important for new audiences, especially as they want that authenticity. They want all the messaging that you're going to be creating to really resonate with what the product really is, fact or fiction. Once the original and distinctive flavor of the Orphan brand is optimized, it can be leveraged to attract new audiences curious to try them. These quote-unquote new brands. That's new to them, and that's really the asset that's a hidden thing, is that you have a whole audience out there that doesn't know it, and so this is going to be new to them. So you have an opportunity to turn this brand that has been around and re-leverage it and reposition it for this market. And that is great because like I said, there's a strong demand for people that want to experience new flavors, that want to connect with even older flavors in the past, and are really active. These are the foodies, these are the cocktailians out there that want to master it all. And so feed into that. Get involved with the FOMO kind of reactions that you can trigger when you really position a legacy brand as having something special that, hey, you haven't tried it before, but this is very special and you need to try. So I think these are hidden assets that really should be considered. The flavor. This also talks about packaging too, where you have this really distinctive kind of package that has this visual sense memory, and you don't want to completely walk away from it. The idea is that you want to leverage that unique original look and vibe of the brand, and you want to refresh it. You don't want to completely scrap it, because that's an asset, right? That has a built-in magnetism to the original audience, and if you tweak it, you can also create a relationship with a new audience. So these have to be done very carefully, these adjustments to the packaging and to the liquid. And it's generally a better idea to have more subtle kind of refreshes of the package, so it's still recognized by the legacy audience, and that you can take advantage of the original marketing campaigns. That's a whole other set of assets. You have all these years worth of advertisements and campaigns that are referencing that original package. Don't get too far away from that, because you might want to refresh those campaigns as well and find out what the gems are in those campaigns and repurpose them, and at least have that option to do so. So that's really important too. And finally, as we look at the kind of calling them orphan brands, how do we escape from the orphanage? How do we get out of this situation and get them to be money makers? And as Jordan had said, ignoring these orphan brands is tantamount to leaving money on the table. You got to make a decision on what you're going to do here. Either put the money into it to relaunch it, put the money in it to sell it, but don't just let it wither and die, because it's a very poor choice of your investment there. So really, if you have a large portfolio, like how to identify the orphan brands, that's key to have that criteria that Michon touched on, and also some of the liquid things that I touched on in terms of what have the strongest ways to connect with older audiences as well as new audiences. And really just invest in those brands. That's the key, to determine what that new audience is, what that new angle is, how the liquid and packaging can be optimized so that it speaks to both core audience, legacy, and new target audience, and really create the marketing vehicles, the PR pitches that will re-energize the sales for the brand, that follows that purpose that Michon spoke to, that really respects the original point of difference flavor-wise and packaging-wise, and that made it stand out from the rest. That's what's going to make it stand out from the rest today, too. So, and then really to systematically just test and execute these ideas, these plans, get the feedback from these trial audiences to find out, hey, what's working here, what's not, adjust, and keep those principles in mind as you're determining whether, which ones really, not whether, but which brands within your portfolio need to be relaunched. So this has been great. We had a lot of fun putting this together in terms of our collective experiences with these brands and putting this together in one spot and getting all these ideas out. We're really excited to talk to you one-on-one about your particular situation, or just any of the ideas that we brought up to go into more depth, do a deep dive on these. I'm going to turn it back to Jordan to close us out, but thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Gerald. And to everyone who joined us today, thank you for joining us. If watching this made you feel any pings that you need to go take a closer look at your inventory of brands in your portfolio, please don't hesitate to give us a call. We can help guide you through the process of identifying which brands are candidates for reimagining, for reinvestment, or ultimately for sale. So once again, my name is Jordan Friedman. I'm a partner at Moroch based in New Orleans. Here also is Gerald O'Kennard, director of the Chicago-based Beverage Testing Institute. I'm Michon Ellis, CEO also of Chicago, also based in Chicago. Please feel free to look us up on LinkedIn, Google us, and give us a call. We're here to help. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye, everybody.